Hi, we started, right? Yes, I know you
Yes.
just did that. Hi, everyone. My name is Rez Islam. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at Legal Services of Long Island, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the President's Committee on Access to Justice. Our committee, along with the Committee on Legal Aid, are hosting this virtual listening session to try to get an understanding from the community about the value of public service loan forgiveness and what it does for nonprofits and a lot of legal services organizations like ours. Abja, Gretchen, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll jump in. Thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Abja Midha. I'm the Executive Director at Volunteers of Legal Service in New York City, and really appreciate everyone taking the time today to talk about this really important topic, public service loan forgiveness. Gretchen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Gretchen Gonzalez. I am the Executive Director of the Volunteer Lawyers Project in Buffalo, New York, Erie County Bar Association Volunteer Lawyers Project, and I co-chair COLA with Abja. And I just echo everyone's remarks and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you. We have a lot of speakers, so I'm going to get right into it. Our first panel has Jamila Lee from the University of Buffalo Law School, Sarah Rogerson from Albany Law School, Betsy Mayotte from the Institute of Student Loan Advisors, and Nancy Nerman from the Community Service Society of New York. Um, First up, we have Jamila. Jamila, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamila Lee. I am the Vice Dean of Student Affairs at UB School of Law. Prior to my role at UB School of Law, I was the Deputy Chief Clerk and Court Attorney for Erie County Surrogates Court. I am an alum of UB School of Law, and my career path has been very intentional. I have pursued government and public interest jobs with the intention of aligning my financial goals and passion for law and helping people in my life. So I am someone who hopes to obtain public student loan forgiveness as well. But in my job, I help students navigate um, academics while they're in law school, their academic success, but also their everything that comes into play with that. And a lot of students who enter UB School of Law do have some sort of financial insecurity because they are first generation college, first generation law school students. UB Law School tends to have a lot of students, given that it's the only state law school in New York, we gather a lot of students who fit that demographic. So a significant a significant amount of our student body seek pathways into the legal profession that are financially accessible, but also socially meaningful. With that, a lot of students have intentions of going to great, great organizations like Legal Aid, Western New York Law Center, Center for Elder Law and Justice, with the intention of them being able to align their career goals, their lived experiences, and helping people who are in positions that they have similarly experienced themselves. So, with that, law students who come from underrepresented or economically disadvantaged backgrounds are more likely to relate to and serve clients with similar experiences. This connection helps strengthen their quality empathy of legal representation, especially for our indigent clients and those relying on government services like legal aid, assigned counsel. Students make a plan well in advance of how they plan to use their Juris Doctor degree, and and they start interning. They do their clerkships. They do all these things with the intention of, again, pursuing public student interest loan forgiveness. Last year, there have been so many students who basically were having a life crisis because they felt like their plans have been altered in so many ways, and in a lot of ways have been just financially inaccessible for them because they have to, as first gens, a lot of them have to support their family members. A lot of them as students still support their family members. Their financial status looks completely different from someone who is not first gen or who comes from a wealthy background. So the public student loan forgiveness has been very much so tied to just financial security long term. This option allows students to who may have never wanted to pursue firm life. The financial public student loan forgiveness has allowed them to explore other options to align law and their passion. And when I say passion, I mean, for instance, being able to connect with someone who has never entered the legal system before, who may not speak, English may not be their native language. And we have the students who come into this role with the intention of helping people who look like them, who had similar backgrounds and cultures like them. And now they're like, I have to reconsider this. I think I'm going to have to go to a private firm. I think I'm going to, as they say, sell their soul. Obviously, not everyone in these jobs sell their soul, but these are some of the thoughts that some of our students have, because they have to, they have to pivot with the intention of having some type of financial freedom within the next 30 years. So in our in my job, it's a lot of counseling. So we try to help students to come to be prepared with plan A, plan B, plan C, but also to still explore the jobs that speak to them most. But without the public student loan forgiveness, if this actually, takes full effect, I think over the next 30 years, the need for attorneys who can understand and relate to marginalized communities, um, that need will grow, and we won't have a lot of attorneys who could really empathize with their clients and understand what they're going through, without the intentional support and inclusive recruitment of students who can do the job, but also not have any financial repercussions to themselves and their families. We all know that majority of our legal services positions do not pay as well as a private firm. Government, it usually takes a little while to get into, good paying jobs. Good paying, what I mean is, being able to sustain your family. And oftentimes with immigrant families or first generation families, you're really taking care of a lot of people, not just yourself. So the legal profession, it risks producing fewer attorneys equipped to really serve these populations effectively. Also, as someone with a public service background, um, our intention and our purpose to provide everyone access to justice. Access meaning, if someone cannot pay for their services, we can provide services for them. So I run the risk of I not run the risk, I'm worried about that we are running the risk of actually having attorneys working in these fields down the line, if this is not an option for the students who are currently most interested in this line of work. I have a lot of students who have come in, and their only plan is to, like, for instance, to work at Center for Elder Law and Justice, right? That's like their only plan. Like, they don't want to think about anything else. This is what they want to do. This is their calling. And when I talk to students like this, it's mainly because, they watch their ailing grandmother be taken advantage of, right? And so it's these experiences that help make really good attorneys, and having these opportunities for them to do this good and necessary work. So in short, I can see the effect of long-term implications over our legal field altogether, the type of attorneys that we're going to be producing that may have to work with indigent services, and just the impact on legal representation altogether. But also, I think that we're going to have a lot more unhappier attorneys. I think that we're also going to, possibly see a rise in, people who expected to use their degree in one way that had to pivot in a way that, that wasn't just a part of the plan, and how it may affect them mental health wise as well. I'll stop there if there is a specific question about what I said, but that's generally what I prepared.
No, thank you. Thank you, Jamila. Has anyone, as far as you know, made an active, people are worried about having to quote unquote sell their soul. Has anyone made an active choice to move away from a plan of public service as far as you are aware?
Oh
Or
my gosh, I can't even tell you how many students were literally crying, like literally having like crisis mode, to the point where we scheduled, we have an embedded counselor at the law school where we gave him notice and scheduled meetings for him to basically, be aware that students were coming to talk to them about this. Because although we know a JD is very transferable and you can pivot in many different ways. However, when you intend to take out all this debt and you do it intentionally, and you plan to provide for your family a certain way and for yourself a certain way after those 3 years, and with the intention of, okay, like I'll be okay making $60,000 to $70,000, and I'll do public student loan forgiveness for 10 years, and then from there maybe I'll go, try to be a part of the United Nations, whatever their plans are. They're thinking like, no, I can't do this anymore. How am I going to live? How am I going to, if I can't get rid of this debt? Because a lot of students who come to UB, they had their BA paid for through loans, right? Some of them, they had their BA and they have another advanced degree. So that's their BA, another advanced degree, and now their law degree that has been all paid for through loans. So realistically, you're looking at $200,000 or more of debt. Realistically, if you want to do student public service loan forgiveness, and you want to do a government job or a teaching job, or there's a certain margin of a salary range, at least in upstate New York, where you will make, right? In addition to what other debts that you have. A lot of people went into a lot of credit card debt due to the pandemic, due to all these various factors. So students are thinking financially, I cannot afford not to go into firm life anymore if this is not a viable option for me. Like, I have to consider firm life. I have to consider corporate. I have to consider things that, I would have never, they probably would not have even have went to law school. Some of the students, not all the students, some of the students that I have worked with, if it wasn't for the public student loan forgiveness, just because there would be no financial freedom in their lifetime. And I'll speak very transparently. I'm first generation American. I am a product of an immigrant family, and my mom still pays on her student loans, and she's in the legal field herself.
Yeah.
And it's just the reality of not having the same access to resources that a middle class like traditional American family would have, right? So myself, although I wanted to be in the legal field like my mom, I pursued all student loan forgiveness type of roles because, one, I could do good work, but two, I can have some foreseeable financial freedom, because I had to then pay for my own education because my mom couldn't pay for me. So it's just this cycle that I feel that a lot of first generations are trying to break. And I don't think that would be possible for a lot of students without the public student loan forgiveness.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Abja, Gretchen, are there any questions you guys might have? I don't want to put you on the spot.
So just a quick question for you, Jamila. You focused on the really important work you do supporting current students. I'm curious, in your role or your colleagues in their roles at UB, if you've been hearing from alumni, recent alumni in particular, who've gone into public service positions as a result of these proposed changes, and what sort of concerns, questions are they raising?
Yes, so our career services office is amazing, and they actually proactively started reaching out to our alums to let them know, even though traditionally they help alums who are 2 to 3 years out, we will help everybody, because we have a really big alum base in the DC area, who a lot of people either quit or left their jobs because they thought that they were going to be fired. So they were really proactive in making sure that they connected with students, making sure that or alums rather, making sure that they understood that the services were there. However, we had current students who had job offers pulled so there were a lot of effects. They had current students had job offers pulled, recent grads who had job offers pulled, and people who just lost their job. So they have just been really proactive in getting the messaging out, saying we have jobs for you. We will help you basically find a way to support yourselves. So they have some of everything that happened was we knew it was going to happen, so it allowed them and our alum, what is it? We have the Gold Group, but we also have our law alumni organization to actively help make sure that people got their jobs for even if they were temporary, so they can support themselves and their family. But a lot of people were really scared, and I feel like the worst happened because people lost funding. I had a student who had a job offer at Journey's End in Buffalo, and it was reneged. And this was a student who was planning on not working during the summer while they studied for the bar. And then this became a reality where they're just like, how am I going to survive? Because I'm working here for the rest of the year, taking a break, but they had financially planned to save money so they could not work for the bar because they don't have any other support. So they had to, and again, find a new job. And our career services is really good because they place people even though it wasn't their ideal job or the job that they had planned, but it gave them that breathing room to find more time to find a job that is more aligned with their interests. We have a lot of students who were initially students and grads who were initially interested in immigration law who want to stay clear of it now. So our CSO has also planned workshops to talk to employers and coaching them how to navigate in terms of helping our alums and recent grads as well to basically just navigate the political landscape altogether. But it's like a 4-person office, and they do a lot of outreach. And we have an online system that allows people to still search for jobs as well. But to be honest, I think the reason why they have a lot of success is because they will pick up a phone and start calling people. And they've done that basically statewide and helped people be placed. So the placement rates are high, but we had a lot of students who are I keep on saying students because a lot of recent grads who had their jobs pulled, and a lot of current people, I think some people who are working for the EEOC, some people who were working in the AG's office, and they used our career services for other placement.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you, Jamila. If there are no other questions, and I think we can move on. We can move to the next panelist. Next up we have, and thank you, Jamila, so much. Next we have Sarah Rogerson, and Sarah, I believe you're going to be doing this with a colleague, Linnea Reed. I hope I said that right?
Regal.
Go ahead. We'll say that one more time.
Sorry, it's Regal.
Regal. Okay, sorry. There it just ends at G over.
Yeah, the last two.
Apologies.
All good.
Thanks.
Great. So thanks for having us, and we'll try to tailor our remarks to not be repetitive of Jamila, who did a really great job of laying out the challenges for law students currently. My name is Sarah Rogerson. I'm a professor at Albany Law School, and I'm director of the Edward P. Swire Justice Center at Albany Law School and our field placement programs, including our pro bono scholars program through the New York State Court system. I also founded Albany Law School's Immigration Law Clinic and directed it for nearly a decade. I'm able to continue to teach, train, and lead the next generation of public interest attorneys because I also directly benefited from the public service loan forgiveness program, and I'm a first-generation attorney on both sides of my family.
I'm Linnea Regal. I'm the Associate Director in our Career and Professional Development Center. I'm also a 2018 graduate of the law school. And I, since graduation, have done work in public service. I worked for a while. And now I work with students who are also doing, figuring out what they want to do. And I will say I also got my master's prior to law school and worked in public service for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And I'm still one of those people working on paying off that debt from 3 also undergrads, so 3 private colleges. So I truly understand how important this is.
And I'd like to begin by sharing some statistics that Linnea recently shared with me in preparation for today. As the only law school in New York's capital and the law school ranked #1 nationally for government law, it might come as no surprise that our graduates heavily populate the public sector, and those numbers are rising. So, for example, Linnea notes that for the class of 2024, 53% of our graduates made the choice to dedicate their career post-graduation to the public sector. So 29% of those students went into government, 18% of students went into public interest, and 6% of students did clerkships. And that's nearly a 10% increase over the last year, which was still impressive, totaling 46% of our graduates who went into the public sector after graduation. 30% of students went into government, 8% of students into public interest, and 8% of students did clerkships. So what this tells us is that our students are consistently and increasingly choosing to serve the public with their talents in lieu of higher paying jobs in the private sector. Many of us at Albany Law School are interested in learning more about what's motivating these students, particularly in a time when legal services funding cuts at the federal level are exacerbating the justice gap in the United States.
Yeah, so really like I don't want to repeat what Jamila said, but I think when we coach our students, we talk a lot about what they're going to choose post-grad and how they're going to make those choices. And a lot of people do come right in and decide that they want to do public service and have public service loan forgiveness instead of going to a high-paying firm, which I think, that's echoing what Jamila said. But something that struck me as we were thinking as she was speaking is that some students, those big high-paying jobs also are grade dependent, and that's not always possible for some students. So, we think about when we're coaching our students and helping them decide what they want to do. Sometimes choices are grade dependent, and sometimes they think, okay, maybe I do want to go to the public service side of things. We do public service loan forgiveness. They don't have to worry so much about, getting our grades up and doing, what I like. Because law school is hard, right? So I think that's something we think about too, is as we're coaching students, and without that, they may have this crippling debt and then still not be able to get that high-paying firm job. So that I think is really, as we're advising students and talking to them about that, we really think about that, and then also. What they want to do post-grad affects how we talk to them about internships. So someone who might want to do something in a firm, or maybe you might still try doing a clerkship or a judicial internship for your summer versus, going into a government or public service type of internship. So it affects the pipeline as well as you're thinking about students, like what they want to do post-grad affects what they do during their internship. So, we did, and I want to highlight a story. We reached out to a student who I think we graduated in 2024 and decided to share this story with us. And I'll just kind of briefly share what he said so we don't take too much time. But he said he was always leaning toward public service. It was something that he always wanted to do. His hometown, there were 3 private attorneys. He's in a rural area, and he specifically calculated the difference between salary, his insurance, student loans, and public loan forgiveness was the best for him. Goes into sort of what he would have paid per month. He tried to pay it over 10 years, with the public service loan option if he was working for a firm, and how much that would have been versus being able to use the income-driven based payments under the public service loan forgiveness. So he used that for his financial future. And he made decisions based on that when he was thinking about what he wanted to do. And so he, just shared that this was how he made his decision to borrow money to be able to do things throughout law school to help him be successful while he was in law school, and then use public service loan forgiveness ultimately in his employment. He's currently working for a Department of Social Services, and he advises the commissioner. And he, he lives in a marginalized rural area. and he sees how there's attorney shortages. He even shared that he did a quick job search, and you can see that public defenders, district attorneys, legal aid offices throughout the state and the rural counties are always looking. Job listings are never taken down. And you know, so just really, it's so how vital it is to have public service loan forgiveness, and how much of that may have helped him make his decision to go back to his, you know, community and to do the work that he's doing. So he really, you know, was echoing kind of the importance of it and how it did, you know, make him, help him in his choice and ultimately how he made his, you know, decisions. And he also shared that he had a couple of firms offer him positions. He did well throughout law school and he turned those down specifically for public loan forgiveness. So he's going back to his community. So.
Yeah, thanks, Lene. And I think it's really important to know it's not just the groups that are targeted by the executive order. It's also a lot of our students considering rural law service that are just in a depressed economic market generally, that have no fewer need proportionately for legal services, right? We can't charge different tuition based on where we think students are going to end up and be placed. We give everyone the same education no matter where they go. And it's an investment in our communities, what law schools do to prepare students to practice wherever they might end up. But this story is typical of many that we hear at Albany Law School. Our immigration legal studies programs and others attract large numbers of very, very talented students who could do anything with their career. It's a choice for them that's really rooted in whatever resources are available to them, which is you know, just another way that the system privileges some students over others along historically disadvantaged groups in terms of who has more choices and who has fewer choices, really. And a lot of students report to us, especially first-gen students, that they choose the path more likely to support their families, as Jamila was saying, because that is important to them. And when you think about it, that in and of itself, that choice is a social safety net for not just the student, but their family, their immediate family, their extended family, and any family that they intend to have. I was just talking with my students in my semester in practice course this morning, trying to get them to imagine 3 different trajectories for themselves after graduation. And one student piped up and said, look, we have student loan debt, and you're asking us to dream in impossible conditions, and we don't have access. Increasingly, we are losing access to the pathways that would allow us to be successful in the way that makes us the most happy. So a lot of times this choice forces students to spend their first several years in the profession focused on income over genuine interest, and it comes at the expense of their well-being, as Jamila also mentioned. And as law schools, we are or should be interested in the well-being of our students and how that translates to the well-being of our profession generally. And I know the state bar is concerned about that as well. So when we're thinking about what makes the most effective justice group in our profession, it has to do with well-being just as much as it has to do with resources. So, and those things are always interconnected. We also, I want to mention, some of our students are able to choose the public interest path, of course, filling pipelines that are also being diligently built by our partners and legal aid agencies across New York State in critical areas like housing, immigration, community economic development, health law, and family law. Again, areas of the law that are traditionally under-resourced in favor of corporate interests. So these graduates are providing critical support to desperately needed component of the social safety net that helps low-income individuals across New York State find ways to escape the legal systems and conditions that keep them from reaching their full potential as New Yorkers and as key participants in New York's economy. I really don't, I try not to quantify people in terms of their economic capacity, but I think it's notable that particularly in New York, in 2021, the New York City Comptroller's Office reported that immigrant New Yorkers paid $61 billion in taxes and constituted $138 billion in spending power in New York State alone. And without access to legal services, many of these individuals and their contributions to New York's economy can and will be deported to other countries. And that's just the truth of the matter. So it's not only a justice affront to cut these services and to cut these avenues for lawyers who would like to go into these professions. It's also an affront to our economic well-being. So Linnea has prepared some closing remarks for us, and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, so I think in closing, we really just see firsthand how our students, our future attorneys, are making career decisions with their student loan debt in mind, and PSLF opens the door for them to pursue, just really meaningful work and really important work in really marginalized communities where resources are often scarce, legal resources. And so public student loan forgiveness really eases the financial burden of student debt. It empowers students to follow paths they are passionate about, and it really helps them commit to public service. So I think, without it, students like the one who shared a story with us, and attorneys like Sarah and myself, and that we wouldn't be doing this work today. It's really helped us get to where we are. So public service strengthens communities, and it expands justice for those who might otherwise go underrepresented. So I really think, it's really important in the platform.
Great, thank you. Thank you both so much. I think you got a full, it was a full testimony. I think it was very informative. I'm just wondering generally, the notice of proposed rulemaking, it's a current issue, but the reliability of public service loan forgiveness, in general, I think is what people are most concerned about. And would you agree that the instability here is creating a chilling effect that you and Jamila, that your group at Albany Law and Jamila at UB Law are kind of seeing, right? Because many of our organizations might not be engaging in the type of activity that's prohibited, but there's this overall attack or a feeling of an overall changes in the public service loan forgiveness might be making the whole idea seem unstable. Is that the general idea? Because while Journey's End at Jamila, that might be a specific issue with the immigration field. I guess my question is, no one's experienced something because these rules haven't gone into effect yet. It's generally the chilling effect that you guys are seeing at this point, correct?
Right, because we have students who are, anywhere from wrapping up their last year of law school to just starting their journey and wondering what it looks like 4 years from now. But also, I was not sure whether or not I'd be able to take advantage of the public service loan forgiveness program because of some of the changes that occurred over the time period that I was in public service. And it's just an added burden to figuring out your career trajectory, to figure out whether you fit into an already pretty prescribed series of guidelines, and then to tailor not only your education, but your future career path accordingly. It's a lot to ask of students who are also trying to learn the law and be effective advocates for justice. Jamila?
I wasn't planning on saying anything else, but I'll just kind of clarify. Although I used the Journey's End specific example, there were a lot of people in the AG's office. There were a lot of people who their career paths became just unstable. And I don't know, I'm speaking specifically for upstate New York, but our legal community is very close and things spread very quickly. So it's a good thing because we're in an area that we look out for each other and things of that nature. But there were so much, like Journey's End had a 17% budget cut, that even if you didn't, so it was just goes down to like technicalities, because there were students who were hired on a certain line who were cut and had a job, but then there were or people who were there for 20 plus years, but then there were new hires based off of, just how everything was set up with their budgets and just being in compliance legally with their donors and things of that nature. But there has been similar organizations that has been affected all over. I can only speak towards upstate New York, but that they have to they have to, I guess, readjust. I'm president of the Minority Bar Foundation, and part of our sole mission is to give underprivileged students money during law school so they can continue to attend law school. And with that sole mission, we have to, we have to pivot as well. And I think that the public student loan forgiveness option, it allows so many people to think about law school who wouldn't normally have thought about attending law school. I don't think that they saw it as a viable option for them without having this avenue. And, the saying that, money rules the world, or whatever the actual saying is. I mean, to a degree, it's true, because how your financial security determines a lot of your path. And the public student loan forgiveness, I think we have a lot of teachers because of it. I think we have a lot of legal professionals because of it. I think that part of the reason why so many people choose this option is because of the quality of life that it promises you. I'll say that. But like, you can have a certain quality of life at a certain point of time. So sorry, I can talk all day, so let me be quiet now.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Jamila. Thank you, Sarah and Linnea. And then next we have Betsy Mayo from the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Betsy.
Thanks, Rez. Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that mine is not a familiar face, my name is Betsy Mayotte, and I'm the president and founder of a nonprofit called the Institute of Student Loan Advisors, or TISLA. TISLA was created to provide free, expert, neutral student loan advice and sometimes dispute resolution to all consumers. I've been working in the student loan industry for over 25 years. I've been a negotiator at multiple negotiator rulemaking sessions for various rule changes in the student loan programs. Most recently, this PSLF negotiator rulemaking that sort of brought us all here together. Spoiler alert, I was that one negotiator that voted no and didn't allow the Department of Education to come to consensus on this proposal. So listen, PSLF has been given a bad rap over the years, and sometimes it was deserved and sometimes it's not. I personally have seen many, many, many success stories of not only borrowers who have benefited from the program, but that due to the fact that they were benefiting from the program, were able to impact many others in their community. Over 1 million borrowers have received forgiveness under public service loan forgiveness to date. Now, these are teachers, childcare providers, law enforcement, social service providers, librarians, legal aid and public defenders, and many others that literally, as we've already heard from the other speakers, could not afford to work in their chosen fields and would not be working in these fields if it wasn't for PSLF. And that's exactly what Congress and former President George W. Bush intended when they wrote the program into law back in 2007. So I'm one of those nerds who went back and read all 200 plus pages of the congressional narrative when they put PSLF into law. And here is just one quote from that congressional record back in 2007. We want to encourage more young people to go into public service. Our policy should respect that choice, not denigrate it. Under the loan forgiveness program, the remaining loan balance on a loan is forgiven for a borrower who has been employed in a public sector job and making payments on the loan for 10 years. These jobs are essential to the communities that they serve. You could replicate that across every single profession that really falls into the service profession, the caring professions, where we are seeing shortages of people because there's a disconnect between the salary they're paid and the debt that they have to incur in order to get the credentials to be able to perform in the public service. Now, the reason I picked that particular quote is because that spells out what PSLF was intended to be right along. And I bring this up because during the negotiated rulemaking session, the Department of Ed, when asked, why are you doing this, other than the fact that they were responding to an executive order that was issued by the president back in March, they said that they were bringing PSLF back to its original congressional intent. Well, if that was the case, and if you know, I didn't just pick and choose a quote. Similar quotes like what I just read are all over that narrative. It's really consistent message is that was the purpose of PSLF. So if that's what the White House and the Department of Ed was trying to do, what they should be doing is expanding PSLF eligibility, not trying to restrict it. The proposed changes to the PSLF program, which, as I mentioned, result from an executive order back in March, are arguably, now, first of all, let me back up a second. I am not an attorney. So I'm probably the only one in this virtual room that isn't an attorney. So take what I'm about to say as you should, knowing that I am not one. But arguably, this proposal is illegal at its face. 455M under the Higher Education Act defines a public service job for PSLF purposes as a full-time job in emergency management, government, and then in parentheses it says excluding the time served as a member of Congress. And then it goes on to the big long list: military service, public interest law services, and so on. Or an organization that's described in Section 501c3 of Title 26 and exempt from taxation. So there's no clause within the statute that allows the Department of Education. Now, remember, regulations cannot be contrary to federal statute. There's no clause in here that gives any wiggle room to at least the definition of a government job or a 501c3. And if Congress did intend to exclude certain things, they would have put it in the statute, again, arguably, as they did by specifically excluding members of Congress as being government employees that can benefit from PSLF. So that's me saying that I fully believe that this is going to go to court, and I actually think that they will lose, that the courts will find that the proposal on its face that they don't have the authority to do because of the federal language, that the statutory language that I just sort of paraphrased for you. But let's put that aside. There's another really big issue within this proposal, and that's the way that the secretary would determine whether an employer was, quote unquote, engaged in substantial illegal activities. Some of the ways that they would determine that and therefore remove PSLF eligibility from that employer make a little bit of sense. If a court determined that the employer engaged in these so-called substantial illegal activities, then they would lose eligibility. If there was a settlement where, as part of the settlement, the entity said, yep, I did it, that makes sense as well. But the part where I personally had the most heartburn, as well as some others around the table, was where the secretary gives herself the authority to determine under the, quote, preponderance of the evidence that the entity has engaged in one of these substantial illegal activities. Now, the secretary, I mean, this arguably is out of her wheelhouse. As I mentioned, we already have processes in place. The courts, for one, the IRS has a very stringent process for determining if an entity fulfills the requirements to be a 501c3 organization. And the Secretary of Education, it's not her role to determine whether someone has violated discrimination laws or violated laws against gender-affirming care for minors, or violated or whether the entity is engaged in terrorism. The other issue is the fact of these, the fact that they limited these so-called substantial illegal activities to only these certain categories. I mean, of course, we don't want taxpayer money to go to an entity that is committing terrorism. But why are we restricting it to terrorism? I also don't want taxpayer money to go to an entity that commits murder or drug trafficking. The fact that they created this perhaps arbitrary list of activities that they would consider illegal for the purposes of PSLF is troublesome. And again, the fact that the Secretary of Education is giving herself the authority to make that determination outside, an already established judicial or other process that would have due process involved in it, is incredibly troublesome. And, as others have mentioned, the fact that this proposal is even out there is creating a chilling effect. I have already seen borrowers that are making panicked decisions based on this proposal. They're taking home equity loans and 401k loans to pay off their loans because they're afraid that their entity is going to lose access to PSLF and no longer be considered eligible. I am also seeing students that are considering changing their career paths because of it. These are people that work for example, hospitals that under their state law and even under federal law, they're performing legal gender affirming care, but they're so afraid that their hospital is going to be deemed ineligible that they're leaving their jobs or, like I said, taking out home equity loans to pay off their student loans. While the notice of proposed rulemaking itself claims that these proposed changes will only affect about 10 employers per year, as I've mentioned and some of our other speakers have mentioned, the effects are clearly more widespread. We should also be concerned, as I mentioned, about the arbitrary nature of the proposal and how the Secretary is going to choose which employers are going to be pursued if supposedly there'll only be 10 or less. The week of the actual negotiations, the department issued a press release accusing Harvard University of, quote, violently violating discrimination laws. The possibility of this rule being used as a political tool under both the current and future administrations should be a concern to everybody, regardless of their political leanings. My final thought I want to share with you on this is that while we should all be taking this incredibly seriously, we should also not be panicking. Listening to the other speakers, and I hear this from borrowers, and I see this on social media, that PSLF is unstable, is actually not true. The only place other than Project 2025 that I've seen any real threat to PSLF is on social media. It's sort of like almost a rumor that's perpetuating itself. There's not a lot of political gain to be made on either side of the aisle to get rid of PSLF. And there were actually no proposals under the most recent budget, under HR1, the most recent budget reconciliation bill, to get rid of PSLF. So while I do think we need to be worried and we need to educate people and take action, we also should not be adding to the panic that PSLF is an unstable program. And I'm going to end my comments there. And I'm open for questions and disagreements.
No, thank you, Betsy, and I really appreciate your insight. As someone that was at the table, thank you for sharing the information that you're finding about people taking out loans to repay their 401k loans and other home equity loans that could put them in further financial issues. I appreciate it. I don't know if I have a question. I think you answered a lot of with the chilling effect. You basically said, "Don't worry about it," which I appreciate.
I mean, I'm not gonna.
No, I know.
I'm not that Pollyanna that I'm gonna say, "Don't worry about it." But with this proposal by itself, first of all, it cannot be retroactive, and the Department of Ed reiterated that. And if an employer is at risk, the borrower is going to be notified well before they potentially lose their eligibility. So there's no reason for any borrower to change their mind on anything at this point.
All right, you heard it here first. I appreciate it, Betsy. Thank you. And that's I know
there is a question in the chat, Rez, for Betsy.
Let's see. Which one was that? Eunice, what time did it come in?
It's 2:51. It's into the Q&A.
I see it. I see it. I got it, Rez. I got it. You can qualify for PSLF. You can live wherever you like. The question is, can I qualify for PSLF if I live in another country? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is an eligible PSLF employer has to be a U.S. employer So if you can work remotely in another country, great. The other thing I want to mention is a lot of people actually benefit more living in another country because you can use the foreign income exclusion to exclude a lot of your income when you file your U.S. taxes, which makes your payment plan that you need to be on for PSLF a lot lower if you live in another country. But again, you do have to work for a U.S. employer. So that's the sticky wicket if you're living in another country for PSLF.
Thank you, Betsy. And thank you, the person with the question. If there are no other questions, and I've done a bad job moderating because we're behind, so I'm sorry. Betsy, if it's all right, we'll go on to the next person. Nancy.
Yep.
Nancy from EdCap. How you doing?
Thanks. Thank you, Rez. And I think a lot of the points that Betsy touched upon, I'm probably going to touch upon as well. So I'll try to go over anything that's too repetitive and just probably reiterate a lot of what she said and just add some of our thoughts. But I also want to mention that Betsy, I am also not a lawyer, so I'm standing with the non-lawyers in this room. My name is Nancy Neerman. I'm the Assistant Director of the Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program, or EdCap. We're a program initiative of the Community Service Society of New York. And for those of you that may not be familiar with EdCap, we were created in July 2019 in response to the student debt crisis that has basically been building in this country for decades. So in addition to the sheer size of the debt portfolio, $1.7 trillion nationally and $96 billion just here in New York with about 2.5 million borrowers, the complexity of the system makes it so extremely difficult to navigate, as many of you probably know, that many borrowers just now need an expert to help them through the system. EdCap was a first in the nation type of program. It's a New York State funded program. And with our network of 10 community-based organizations around the state, we offer free educational workshops and personalized one-on-one counseling sessions, conducting thousands of those sessions annually. And our client base is pretty diverse. We're not a legal aid organization, so we don't have the monetary restrictions or the income restrictions. So we see a full range of clients in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of age. Almost 30% of our clients are over 50. People tend to think of this as a young person's problem. It's not. And that's the fastest growing group, by the way. And our clients are anybody from people who live in shelters to municipal workers to lots of legal aid professionals, assistant DAs, and even judges. So our broad reach combined with the depth of our individualized counseling gives us a very unique lens into the widespread and deeply personal impact of student loan debt across all segments of the economy. So you obviously all know what the PSLF program was, established by George W. Bush to basically attract people into public service careers, which can be difficult to staff because of the low pay or the relative low pay. There are an estimated 1.3 million state, local, and public authority workers in New York, of which about 500,000 are estimated to hold some student debt. So this is a huge chunk of the employee population in New York State, as it is nationally. And many of these professionals are required to get educational credentials that can be very expensive to obtain and leave borrowers with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. As somebody said earlier, it's not unusual for somebody with a law degree to graduate with upwards of $250,000 in debt. Medical degrees, we've seen people with $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in debt. Even teachers and nurses accumulate six-figure loan balances without too much effort these days. And while the rising cost of living affects everyone, public sector workers often face greater financial strain, especially those trying to raise families. And these roles are essential to the health and well-being of communities, yet without a clear and attainable path to debt relief, many individuals may opt, as we can see, apparently they already are from some of the previous speakers, may opt for higher paying private sector jobs or leave these professions altogether. And this is why PSLF has always tended to enjoy bipartisan support in Congress since its inception. And to reiterate what Betsy said, it's very notable that in the budget bill that was signed in July, there were no substantive changes made to the PSLF program. If Congress wanted to do that, that's probably where they should have done it. So these proposed rulemaking, the proposed rulemaking that would address the issue and the definition of qualifying employer, could, if they were allowed to go through in the way they are being proposed, significantly undermine the program's reach and effectiveness, particularly here in New York State. By introducing this very broad criteria, the new rules essentially risk disqualifying entire categories of public service organizations, including nonprofits and government agencies that provide these critical services. The rule, as Betsy said, would grant the Secretary of Education unprecedented authority to determine, based on just a preponderance of the evidence, whether a government or nonprofit employer is engaged in activities deemed to have a substantial illegal purpose. And that kind of leads to a number of critical questions. So if a legal aid organization, I've seen some of these questions already in the Q&A, if a legal aid organization defends undocumented immigrants, could that be considered illegal under the new rule? If a hospital provides gender-affirming care to a small subset of their patients, could the entire institution lose PSLF eligibility? In cities like New York, where over 300,000 public employees share the same federal employer identification number, because as you probably know, qualifying employers are determined by the EIN number that you put into that application, could a single department's actions jeopardize PSLF access for all? And although the department suggested that it could narrowly or could narrow the enforcement to specific units within large organizations, it's provided no clear mechanism for doing so. And given the current inability of this drastically reduced staff at the Department of Education to administer existing programs like total and permanent disability discharge or income-driven repayment enrollment, the operational feasibility of implementing these changes is highly questionable. So historically, PSLF has been plagued by administrative challenges, lack of transparency, widespread borrower confusion. But it wasn't until the Biden administration took meaningful steps to correct the past errors by streamlining processes, automating systems, and increasing transparency that the PSLF program began to truly serve the borrowers it was designed to help. Unfortunately, the newly proposed rules, if they were to go into place unchallenged, threaten to reverse that progress. But I agree with Betsy, because we see thousands of clients, and since we started our operation in 2019, I would say at least half our clients are PSLF clients. Probably the majority of the case savings that we've been able to attain for our clients were through PSLF. If the rules are allowed to go to be put in place as written, it certainly would make the program far less stable and reliable. But as people have been surmising, there will probably be legal challenges to this. Compounding the issue, we have to keep in mind also that new federal borrowing limits that are set to take effect in 2026 are going to make it harder for students to finance expensive degrees for a number of these critical roles. So many are going to be forced to seek private loans, which don't have the access to forgiveness programs, or they may be abandoning these career paths altogether. And then when combined with the looming potential instability of PSLF, we could see a sharp decline in enrollment in these essential fields. The legal community, I mean, as I said, I'm not a lawyer. EdCap does not litigate, but many of our affiliate organizations in our community-based organizations that are part of our network are legal aid organizations. And most of us at EdCap are not attorneys, but we've worked with our network partners and with many people in the legal community for many years, providing workshops, one-on-one counseling to legal aid staff, public defenders, district attorney's office, and so on. So I've seen firsthand how vital the services offered by these groups are to underserved communities. And I've also seen how financially strained the legal professionals providing them often are. We can only hope that through advocacy, public engagement, legal challenge, these proposed changes to PSLF will not be implemented. But New York State can also step up and play a more important role in this whole process by mitigating some of the potential damage by expanding its student loan forgiveness programs that are offered through HESC. And those would be programs, the DALF program, which is for district attorneys and indigent lawyers, people representing indigent legal aid or lawyers in public interest lawyers, essentially. They have on the books forgiveness programs for social workers and nurses. They need to put some money into these programs. They need to expand them. They need to make them more easily accessible because frequently some of these programs are not open for borrowers that are interested in participating. Just the stakes for borrowers, communities, and the future of public service at this point are high. So everybody needs to pitch in, and I'll make an appeal here for the state of New York to do their part and expand their options for people that are going to be facing a hard time just funding higher education going forward, never mind the public service loan forgiveness program. And I will leave it at, well, I will just say, I do want to kind of reiterate Betsy's thoughts about the fact that not all hope is lost. We also see a lot of clients right now that are asking if there's anything that they should do. Do they need to take action? Do they need to think about switching their career paths at this point? I mean, most of these people are already folks that have loans. So they're not necessarily embarking upon careers. They're sort of already fully in their career, but they're not fully through the PSLF process. All I can say is that the rule isn't even in place yet. If they do everything on time, it would go into the Federal Register, I think, on November 1st, but not be implemented until July 1st of next year. So there's time to see how this all plays out, particularly if you've been pursuing PSLF and you're halfway or more through the process. I don't know that now's the time to throw up your hands and give up. I'll stop there.
No, thank you, Nancy. No, that was great, and thank you for providing your insight and making recommendations for how New York can help. We really appreciate that insight, and the idea that some of these programs that are available to provide public, loan support for certain communities are not open all the time. I don't know if I have any additional questions. I think you addressed everything that I was thinking about. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over. If there are no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Abja, who will be moderating the second panel.
Great. Thanks so much, Rez. And thank you so much to our first group of panelists for sharing your perspectives and expertise. And so our next panel of speakers are speakers who are joining us from public and trust legal services organizations, and looking forward to hearing their personal experiences with public service loan forgiveness, as well as the implications of these changes on legal services organizations. And so to kick things off, I'm going to turn it over to Sal Curran, Executive Director of Volunteer Lawyers Project of Central New York. Sal, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Abja. And I just have to say, I've been listening in on the last few speakers, and their testimony is very impactful and also right in line with what I'll be testifying about. So again, my name is Sal Curran. I am the Executive Director of the Volunteer Lawyers Project of Central New York. I'm also a member of the Committee on Legal Aid and the President's Committee on Access to Justice. I want to start by thanking the New York State Bar Association and these committees for convening this important listening session on the public service loan forgiveness and access to justice. VLP-CNY is a nonprofit legal aid program, and our mission is to expand access to justice by engaging the legal community in service to those in need. I'll be speaking to the importance of the PSLF program to legal aid organizations like VLP-CNY, and later my colleague Pauline Smith will speak to the individual stories of clients that we've served through our Education Debt Counseling Assistance program. In the past year alone, our staff, together with more than 600 volunteer attorneys, law students, paralegals, and others, served over 4,000 clients, benefiting more than 10,000 people in central and upstate New York. We help tenants avoid eviction, survivors of domestic violence secure safety, immigrants obtain safety and security, and transgender individuals fight and avoid discrimination by obtaining affirming legal name changes and more. For example, last year, we prevented or delayed eviction for over 2,700 individuals, served over 1,000 immigrants, and completed over 160 legal name changes for transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary clients, with nearly every client that we served reporting improved safety and self-esteem from our program. These services are lifelines for people in crisis. And the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is absolutely essential to making this work possible. Our attorneys graduate with six-figure debt loads, but they accept salaries far below what they could earn in the private or even the public sector. PSLF is what makes it feasible for them to choose legal aid and to stay long enough to build the expertise that our communities need and deserve. Without PSLF, many of our attorneys simply could not remain in this work. We've already lost one young attorney to a state job. She cited both a 60% salary increase and her fears about uncertain future of PSLF as reasons for leaving. She was working in our immigration program and was very concerned about the ways that her work in particular might be affected by the rules that have been proposed by the Department of Education. So this is why the Department of Education's proposed rule is so alarming. The rule would allow the secretary to strip the PSLF eligibility from nonprofits if their work is deemed to involve a substantial illegal purpose, which is vague and politicized and is something that's being used to target organizations that are serving immigrants, transgender youth, survivors of violence, and other marginalized groups. This proposed rule is not just bad policy, it's likely unconstitutional, as the previous speakers have said. By defining a legal purpose to include healthcare to transgender youth, the department is engaging in a facial discrimination on the basis of sex and transgender status, a move that federal courts have already recognized as unlawful. And even more troubling, the department is attempting to make medical decisions it has no expertise or authority to make. And these sensitive decisions about healthcare should rest with doctors and patients and not with federal education officials. And for VLP CNY, the threat is not just theoretical, it's personal. You know, we serve immigrants, such as an immigrant youth who came to us just weeks before his 21st birthday. We worked tirelessly, both our staff and a volunteer attorney, to get this person's special immigrant juvenile status before the deadline. And because of that, he avoided deportation, gained employment authorization, and hopefully is on a path to permanent residency. Without free legal aid, he would have been removed from the US. And since he entered without inspection, it is possible that the current rule would affect our ability to serve people like this, who are absolutely eligible for legal status based upon past abuse and neglect. Or consider the transgender clients that we've assisted with legal name changes. Like I said, over 160 in the last year. They tell us that having their correct ID isn't just paperwork. It's the difference between feeling safe at school or work or living in the daily fear of harassment. If PSLF stripped away our attorneys' ability to serve these clients, the communities would have nowhere else to go. It's not only our staff who suffer, but it's the clients who lose their only chance at justice and safety that are at risk. The PSLF's program was created by Congress to ensure that professionals could serve the public without being crushed by debt. To undermine it now would be unlawful, unjust, and devastating to access to justice. I strongly encourage the New York State Bar Association to step forward as a leader in speaking out against the proposed rule and also supporting efforts to continue not only the national PSLF program, but also state-based student loan forgiveness programs. We call on NYSBA to state that the Department of Education should withdraw the proposed rule and stop weaponizing PSLF to punish organizations that serve marginalized communities, and to reaffirm that all nonprofit legal services are PSLF eligible. We also call on NYSBA to support the New York legislators' efforts to continue the EdCap program funding so that we continue to have funding to fight for student loan forgiveness and expand state-based loan forgiveness programs. The promise of PSLF is the promise of access to justice. And so on behalf of VLP-CNY, our staff, and our clients, I ask that we're able to keep that promise. Those are my comments. Any questions, Abja, or anybody else?
Thank you so much, Sal. No questions, but just really appreciate your, highlighting the impact not only on, on legal services organizations staff, right, but through that the potential negative impacts for all of our clients. And it is really concerning to hear, right, that you've already heard from one departing staff member that this was a consideration into that they, it's something they took into consideration. So it's very real, right, as you're describing. So just in the interest of time, we're going to keep things moving along. So thank you again, Sal. And we're going to turn it over now to Vivian Storm from Legal Services of Long Island. Vivian.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a supervising attorney at Legal Services of Long Island. Legal Services of Long Island is an LSC-funded organization that provides civil legal services to people with low incomes and other vulnerable populations. Our work focuses on helping to preserve housing stability in the community, maintaining our clients' subsistence income, and advocating for children with disabilities, veterans, seniors, survivors of domestic violence, and other vulnerable populations. We also have a program that partners with community organizations like church outreach centers to help these community workers understand the legal problems that their neighbors face. We work in suburban and rural communities and focus on the underserved. Legal Services of Long Island does not, I hope, engage in any of the activities targeted by the proposed changes to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, although particularly given the ambiguity in how the rules may be interpreted, the changes are concerning to our staff and are likely to further impair our ability to recruit and retain skilled legal workers if enacted. I oversee units that represent tenants in eviction proceedings in Nassau County, a program that provides legal information at community locations through volunteer attorneys, and education debt assistance as part of EdCap, the Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program, in partnership with Nancy Neerman and the Community Service Society of New York. In these capacities, I work alongside, supervise, and provide student loan counseling to attorneys and other legal professionals across the spectrum of adult life and career stages. I also work with public service employees from other sectors. My education debt counseling includes helping lawyers and other legal professionals evaluate the financial feasibility of continuing their work in the public service. Long Island is an incredibly high-cost area to live in. The median family income in Nassau County is over $164,000. Since Long Island is indeed an island, it's not possible for our staff to commute from lower cost of living areas. So doing our work requires either a much higher income partner or very careful planning. Depending on their family compositions, our staff may be eligible for services from us in addition to student loan counseling. Some staff take on second jobs to make ends meet. Many of our staff took on substantial educational debt to obtain the skills and credentials needed to do this work. Other staff took on debt to provide similar educations for their children. Some staff are still repaying their own student debt, even as they juggle Parent Plus loans for their children and reach retirement age themselves. Others have private student loans in addition to federal loans because their families could not afford the full cost of attendance remaining after exhausting federal student loans. Our staff with the highest debt burdens are often the most valuable to fulfilling our mission because they share common life experiences with our clients. This life experience enhances the ability to advocate for our clients in ways that training and education alone cannot. Our staff and other public service employees rely on income-driven repayment plans and public service loan forgiveness to make their work financially viable. Even with these programs, the high cost of living in our area makes it very difficult for staff to save for their children's educations on top of retirement savings and ongoing living expenses. Planning to manage educational debt through income-driven repayment and public service loan forgiveness requires long-term commitment and a long-range strategy. Borrowers must remain employed full-time in the public service for 120 months. This 10-year period covers at least 2 presidential administrations. As a result, borrowers must feel assured that affordable repayment plans will remain available and that the terms of public service loan forgiveness will remain consistent over an extended period of time when they're making decisions about their career paths and funding their educations. If the Secretary of Education is able to exclude categories of nonprofit or government employers from eligibility for public service loan forgiveness, this will have a chilling effect on our staff and prospective students interested in public service careers. The concern is not just the wording or exact parameters of the restrictions, but the fact that ideologically based restrictions might be imposed at all. The disruption to income-driven repayment plans that borrowers have faced for the last year exacerbates these concerns. Public service employees who are enrolled in or applying for the SAVE plan have not been getting credit towards public service loan forgiveness for over a year. Applications to switch to other repayment programs have often been stalled for many months, leaving borrowers without an opportunity to make payments that will receive appropriate credit. I understand there are currently over 1 million unprocessed IDR applications. As a result, public service employees already come to me concerned that the program will be eliminated entirely or made impossible to access after they've planned their financial futures around the availability of loan forgiveness. Pursuing public service loan forgiveness now feels to many like gambling rather than sound financial planning for their families. And I don't need to look any further than the paralegal who assists me in our EdCap unit to find an example of a prospective law student who's evaluating her educational plans and career path based on the availability of public service loan forgiveness. Allison is a talented recent college graduate who's committed to working in the public interest, but her father died while she was still in school, so she needed a combination of private and federal student loans to finish college. Allison is very interested in going to law school and is in the application process now so that she can enhance her skills and have a greater impact in the community. But Allison will likely need to continue working while she's in school to keep her private loans from becoming unmanageable. Caps on Parent Plus borrowing will also limit Allison's options for furthering her education. As an EdCap counselor and student borrower herself, Allison sees better than anyone both the life-limiting burden that student loans can have and the uncertainty that's plagued the student loan repayment process. While the focus of this panel is on how changes to public service loan forgiveness affect young professionals entering the legal profession, another concern is more experienced professionals' ability to continue public interest work as they start families, purchase homes, and plan for their children's educations. The July budget bill excluded parent borrowers who take out loans after 2026 from access to income-driven repayment plans, which is a prerequisite for public service loan forgiveness. This change will make it far more difficult for experienced professionals to remain in public service, even as we struggle to attract new talent. A secure public service loan forgiveness program for student borrowers is therefore critical to our ability to fulfill our mission. I'm happy to take any questions.
Vivian, thank you so much, and really appreciate the examples you provided of your colleagues who are at various stages in their careers who are addressing this issue. I guess just a quick question for you on your last point with respect to experienced professionals and the new caps on programs. Just for those who aren't as familiar, and including myself, it'd be helpful if you could just explain that again and the connection to. It sounds like the the trickle effects with public service loan forgiveness?
So up until now, Parent Plus borrowers have been able to work towards public service loan forgiveness by consolidating their loans and applying for an income-driven repayment plan, the same way that they would have been eligible for having their own student loans forgiven. So that means that for older public service employees who might not have been able to save for their children's college educations because of the work that they were doing and the financial realities that their families faced, there was a path to help their children get the same educational credentials they have themselves without resorting to private student loans. But that is effectively closed off now. So while we're hoping that the changes to the scope of public service loan forgiveness in terms of the type of work that people are doing are not going to be as disastrous as they could be, depending on the implementation. For Parent Plus borrowers, the end of public service loan forgiveness is a reality starting in 2026.
Got it. Thank you so much for that explanation in more detail. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to just keep us moving along. And so next up, we have Jean Stevens, the Benefits Law Project Director at Volunteers of Legal Service. Jean?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this panel. Thank you to the Bar Association. And then thank you to all who have spoken before me. I've been listening also, and it's really amazing to hear everyone's perspective and to really think through the implications of what these changes could have on our fields and on the work that we do. I wanted to, briefly say, I'm hearing from so many of you. I wanted to share some of my personal experiences with PSLF and how it's affected me and also my colleagues. And just to identify, I'm Jean Stevens. I'm the project director of the Benefits Law Project at Volunteers of Legal Service with ABJA. We were established in 1984 to leverage private attorneys in the private bar to provide free legal services to low-income New Yorkers as a way to fill this justice gap. So here at Bowles, I'm part of the Benefits Law Project. We assist claimants with unemployment insurance claims hearings. We also assist seniors applying for scree injury rent freeze benefits, and we also assist with housing-related rent benefits. In our other projects, we also provide end-of-life and incapacity planning programs for seniors and older veterans. We also have full legal services for small businesses. We also have an immigration law practice for young adult clients. And prior to my time here at Bowles, I worked as an eviction defense and benefits attorney in New York for about 10 years. So like I was saying, I've heard, from many of you today, like all of us have, about your experiences and your thoughts on how it's affected your staff and colleagues in the field. I really wanted to share my own personal experience with loan forgiveness, because I'm sure that I am indicative of many people who relied on the public service loan forgiveness program in making my way into this career. Prior to law school, several years before law school, I was working in a different industry looking to make a change. I wanted to shift my career into some sort of service where I could use concrete skills, very specific set of skills to directly assist the public. I was, knew that I wanted to be somewhere in this world of public interest, but I didn't know that language at the time. I just knew I wanted to help people very directly, very specifically, whether it was food insecurity or housing challenges or employment issues. I wasn't really sure the way to go about it, but that's what I planned to do. I had a friend at the time who was a student at NYU law school, and she explained to me that she was interested in practicing public interest law. I did not understand what that was. I didn't really know. And she explained that based on what I was looking to do, I should pursue a career in law and public interest law, and I could practice direct services. So of course, I was several years out of college. I was not wealthy. I did not have assets. I did not have family who was willing or able to assist me in law school. So my immediate concern was cost. How could I afford to attend law school full time? And if I took out loans, how would I ever pay them back? It was extremely daunting to me. It just seemed impossible. It just seemed like that was just no way forward. But then, of course, I learned about public service loan forgiveness, and it was truly the light bulb moment. It was a game changer. Suddenly, this seemed like the solution, the way I would actually be able to pursue this path and actually find a way to do the work that I hoped to do, which was to directly affect and help people who needed assistance. And so I relied on the program. I applied to law school. I got into law school and took out loans and began on my way. And I can absolutely say that without the public service loan forgiveness program, I would not have taken this path. I would not have undertaken that debt. And so I graduated and then began my career in public interest. And I started working as a housing lawyer in Brooklyn in eviction defense. And for the next 10 years, I worked at 3 different nonprofit organizations, and I was always very sure I was making sure that they qualified as an eligible organization under the program. I very, very diligently, year to year, was recertifying, making sure I kept on track. And in the process, I was, representing hundreds of indigent clients who couldn't afford lawyers in housing court and other legal issues they faced. And I learned in real time, face to face, speaking with, hundreds of people, how much access to justice is just so important and how critical it is. And to see how desperately people needed legal assistance. Of course, as any of us know in this room, nearly all of the positions in the public interest sector pay much less than careers in the private sector. So absolutely, I would not have been able to afford to do this work continuously without public service loan forgiveness. I think, we think about the loan forgiveness aspect of this, but, also in this program, you are making payments adjusted to your income. And that is absolutely critical if you're in a position where you're just not paid as much compared to what you could be paid in a private, sector. So, with my public service salary through the nonprofits I worked in, I was able to cover my rent, my transportation costs, cost of living costs, and my loan repayments. So I absolutely know that I would not have been able to afford and stay in this career, in these positions without the loan forgiveness program. I absolutely would not have been able to continue to serve the public and provide greater access to justice. And always in the back of my mind, and I'm not sure if others in the room feel the same way, I lived in fear that the program might change. What if the program changes? What if suddenly it's no longer exists? What if suddenly my organization is no longer an eligible organization? I was constantly worried because what would that mean? And would I have to stop doing this work? Would I be facing many, many more years of repayments? Would I be able to buy a house? Would I be able to have kids and afford kids? It was crucial to me that the program remained constant, reliable, secure. So I'm very, very happy to say that after 10 years, last year, my loans were forgiven. They were forgiven in full. And so I'm going to continue my practice, in public interest work. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay. I will continue to serve, individuals who are facing various legal crises in their lives. This is the work that I love, that I want to do. I'm well equipped to do. I'm well trained. At this point, I'm very experienced. And I know absolutely that I would not have been here if it hadn't been for this program. And I'm very grateful for it. And so, I think, my experience, we can extrapolate it to, millions of us, until there's any change in our systems, all individuals are subject to our legal system in, multitude of ways and encounter it daily. Many individuals and here and across the country cannot afford attorneys to navigate the system in whatever way, whether you are in New York City or you're in rural Kansas. People have legal needs and they can't afford lawyers. So access to justice is an enormous public need. And we need to ensure that talented, driven, committed individuals continue to attend law school and then pursue this work in this public need. And we need a system to ensure that there's affordability in repaying law school loans. And I will say, now I've been a supervisor, I've been a manager, I've been part of recruitment processes and training. I have many peers who are in similar situation as me, and we would not have been able to continue our careers without this program. We can't recruit talent without it. How can we, expect that many people who would be facing the risk of, thousands of dollars, triple, like we were saying, 6-digit, $300,000 in loans, how would they be able to comfortably feel that they could take a position without, guarantee that their loans could be forgiven and that they would have some kind of ability to have payments that they could afford. I've actually encountered many, many people who have told me that they really wished they could pursue public interest law. Like maybe they wanted to be a housing lawyer, they wanted to be an immigration lawyer, but they just couldn't figure out how they would afford it on their public interest salary. And I guess they did not know about the program, but they didn't start it. And now they are now in the private sector and they don't ever see a way out. And for some people who haven't even gone to law school, they're deterred altogether. If they know they would want to do work in the public sector, they want to do public interest law, they just think to themselves, I can't take out those loans. I can't do it. I won't be able to guarantee that for 10 years the program will remain in place and that I'll be able to pay off my loans. So we won't even see those people, in law school, that they're lost, and in other industries where we need similar people who are committed to public interest work. So, these proposed changes, as others have said extremely eloquently, would be hugely damaging to the critical need that we continue to have of providing legal services to those who can't afford attorneys. People, if they're anything like me, would feel like they couldn't rely on this program if it's constantly going to be subject to changes at the whim of a few individuals, or if definitions can change quickly of like what counts as a qualifying organization or not. It'll just be too tenuous. And so these changes, again, as others have said, are too risky and vague. And I echo the encouragement to the New York State Bar Association to take any steps it can to, address these concerns, to challenge these concerns, and to possibly assist in creating solutions. So thank you so much, and thank you again to the Bar Association for hosting us today.
Thank you, Jean. Really appreciate your sharing your own personal experience and also, as you have progressed with your career and then stepped into management roles, how you've seen this issue come up for those who you supervise or could supervise, who are exploring these careers. I don't have any questions, Rez or Gretchen, anything? Okay, great. So we'll keep moving along for looking at the clock. Next up, we have Pauline Smith from Volunteer Lawyers Project of Central New York. I'll turn it over to Pauline. Pauline, I can't hear your...
Yeah, I can't hear you either, Pauline. I'm not sure if but you don't look muted, right? Why don't we...
why don't we give you a minute to see if you can get that working, and if we have Jennifer from the legal project, we can
Yes, she's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, there you are. Great. Sorry, Jennifer. Yeah, Jennifer, if you don't mind going out of order, we can have you jump in and then turn it back to Pauline afterwards.
Yeah, no problem. Excuse the messiness of my office. We're moving. So we've a little bit chaotic here. My name is Jennifer Storm. I'm the Deputy Legal Director at the Legal Project. We're a nonprofit law firm in Schenectady, New York that offers pro bono representation to low-income individuals with a strong focus on serving victims of domestic violence. We began as a domestic violence law firm. We expanded, we handle immigration matters, particularly VAWA self-petitions, U visas, asylum claims, and we also have a foreclosure defense program and have expanded to eviction defense, among some other services. I've spent most of my career at nonprofits that offer pro bono civil legal services to low-income individuals. I'm extremely passionate about access to justice. It matters. I believe the proposed changes to PSLF are going to seriously impede our ability to provide high-quality legal representation to our clients. And the need for such representation is very great. At the Legal Project, most of our clients are navigating domestic violence in custody battles or divorces. They're defending against evictions or foreclosures amidst what is essentially a housing crisis that is not receiving the reporting that it needs, or trying to secure immigration status in the face of immense hardship. Some of the things that our immigrant clients have endured, it just shocks the conscience. Our clients' lives are at the mercy of the civil legal justice systems, and they deserve to have experienced, high quality representation navigating those systems. They deserve attorneys who are knowledgeable and have the resources to advocate and to litigate, the same as they could buy on the private market if they had funding. That need for pro bono representation has always been greater than our collective capacity. And when I say collective, I mean all of the organizations like mine that do their best to help people throughout New York. We've never been able to meet it entirely. We try. But it used to be that our capacity was limited by program funding or by budgetary concerns. Recently, I think it's been limited by hiring challenges as well. Back in 2007, I began my career at the Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York. At that point, staff attorney positions were filled quickly. They were competitive. There were always more applicants than there were positions. That was still true when I came to the Legal Project in 2018. But now most nonprofit law firms have vacant positions or positions where we have one candidate for, or positions that will take months to fill. That's a challenge that limits our capacity to help people access justice. The economics for our attorneys are difficult. We already asked our attorneys to accept salaries well below market rate. And as our attorneys grow in experience, that gap between the nonprofit pay and the market rate also grows. So we already lose experienced attorneys to state jobs in private practice. In the last 18 months, sorry, not the last month, that'd be bad. The Legal Project has lost 2 attorneys to the state and 2 to private practice. And I can state with certainty that PSLF was a factor in at least most of their decisions. Along with, salary expectations and long-term planning. They don't know whether they can rely on this program to still be here at a time when they're trying to budget and buy houses and plan families. This turnover already creates an obstacle to our mission. It requires that I divert time that I could be spending to help clients access justice and spend that time hiring and training. And it takes time to grow new attorneys, to get them the experience and the knowledge they need to do their jobs well. And then they'll face the same challenging economic choices as their predecessors. And the changes to PSLF, if enacted, will greatly exacerbate these difficulties, especially given the changes to income-driven repayment options are, kind of underreported, but additionally very concerning to me. I went to law school as a single parent. I have an autistic child. I financed my education with a combination of loans and scholarships. I accepted salary limitations that were inherent in public service, and I confronted all those same challenging realities, but I was able to do it because of PSLF. That was a critical bridge to me for that gap. I'm happy to make sacrifices to do the job I love, but without the income-driven loan payments and without the promise of loan forgiveness, it just would not have been economically feasible. I couldn't have accepted those limitations. So that is the reality that many others are going to face. A Juris Doctorate is an expensive endeavor, and a career in law no longer carries the same promise of financial prosperity as it once did. There are more lucrative paths that don't require 3 years of expensive postgraduate training. And even those who are civically minded may try to select a career in service that does not require 6 figures worth of debt over 3 years of education. And then for those that do become lawyers, it may not even be a difficult economic choice anymore. It just may be no choice at all. It might simply be impossible for them to pay their monthly student loan balance with new changes to income-driven repayment, when also contending with rising housing and grocery costs. And those who do find a way to make that work are going to have a harder time in the long term. That gap between their income and the market rate is going to keep increasing as they proceed in their career. And public service loan forgiveness has traditionally been that bridge that allows us to cross that and make it possible for those who really want to do it. And this is, of course, to me, the point, I think. The changes to PSLF, I believe, are intended to reinforce existing obstacles and to make it harder for us to provide these meaningful services to our clients. I understand that some may be budget driven, but on the whole, I think that there is a targeted viewpoint aspect to this. And I think I'm especially concerned with the proposed changes of expanding the disqualifying criteria to exclude organizations that allegedly serve a substantially illegal purpose. The disqualifying criteria that they're defining is broadly and ambiguously, it's defined broadly and ambiguously, and it appears to target specific populations, be ideologically driven, and serve a political agenda. And even if these categories are in fact narrowly enforced, there's still a chilling effect that comes into play just from the existence. Even now, when these changes have not yet been enacted, there is such a concern about them that we're seeing people take this into account. And you can't really blame anyone for taking that into account. These are significant financial commitments. These are, the entire basis for your career. Of course, you're going to be concerned when there's a politically driven attack. At the moment, it's not clear to us how or if these changes would apply to us. In the broadest sense, is my domestic violence program against public policy because it helps people end marriages? Is my immigration program because it's helping asylum claims or helping with U visas for people who prior to that were undocumented or lacked status? Is that aiding and assisting illegal immigration activity by their definition? If we help domestic violence victims who just happen to be undocumented, is that aiding in illegal immigration? In my opinion, it needs to be made clear that access to justice by definition can never be a substantially illegal purpose. We are trying to help people access the legal system. Kind of by definition, that is a legal purpose. And I can take any questions anyone has.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Really appreciate your comments. You've touched upon a whole number of different areas. And in particular, I just want to note and appreciate your focus on not just the forgiveness piece, right, but the income-driven loan repayment program portion of the program as well, how important that is. I don't have any questions. Gretchen or Rez, do you? Okay. In that case, I see Pauline is back, and hopefully your audio is working now. So we'll turn it over to you.
It should be working now. Thank you.
That's great.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pauline Smith, and I work as an Educational Debt Consumer Assistance Program advocate at the Volunteer Lawyers Project of Central New York. Today, I want to speak to you about PSLF from a slightly different perspective. I want to emphasize the positive impact of PSLF on New York State's schools, university, healthcare systems, and our safety net programs. First off, I want to be clear. PSLF isn't just about student debt. It's about the kind of country we want to live in and whether we keep our promises to those who dedicate their lives to making that country better. For our children, for our elderly family members, and our neighbors struggling in a bootstrap economy. PSLF itself is actually quite simple. In 2007, through a bipartisan act of Congress, PSLF was set up with a promise. If you spend 10 years serving the public, teaching our kids, nursing our sick, protecting our communities, or working in public interest law while making payments on your loans, the federal government promised to forgive the remaining balance of the student loans you took out to get that education. 10 years of payments, 10 years of service, and then relief. But let me ask you, without PSLF, how many of those careers would even be possible? Could a teacher with $60,000 in student loans afford to stay in the classroom instead of leaving for a high-paying private job? How about a professor at a public community college who is teaching there rather than at a private university? Could a nurse in a public hospital continue serving when the weight of her debt feels unbearable? The answer is probably no. If we don't defend and strengthen PSLF, we risk losing the people who make our communities run and those who make our communities run better. PSLF is not a giveaway. It's about promises kept for those who promise their careers to our community. You give your time, your skill, your heart to public service. In return, we as a nation lift up that financial burden off your shoulders. It's not a handout, it's a promise kept. And here's why it matters right now to our clients that I am actively working with. New York State is facing teacher shortages. One of my clients has accumulated nearly $150,000 in debt pursuing a master's degree in teaching. That's what she needed to actually become the kind of teacher she wanted to be. When she found her first teaching job, she was paid only $51,000 a year in a large public school district, despite having to take out $150,000 to get that job. Yet, she dug in. She worked year after year teaching science to students who faced unimaginable odds. And year after year, her students succeeded. They graduated at higher rates than their peers. And then, despite years of payments and multiple PSLF applications, she couldn't get one approved. With advocacy and guidance from VLPCNY and our EdCap program, her application was finally successful and her loans were forgiven. Afterwards, she could keep doing what she loved without the fear of being financially crippled by debt. But what happens to our schools if teachers walk away? What happens if professors walk away? Our students can't afford to lose teachers because we break that promise of PSLF. And that story is not unique with my clients. The challenge extends far beyond education. It affects many public service professions across healthcare, law, social services. Dedicated professionals are burdened by student debt, but they are lifted by PSLF. Consider another of my clients, a nurse practitioner. His education costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, yet it's comparatively low paying compared to doctors and other professions. He faithfully repaid his loans on an income-driven repayment while working at a public hospital. But 10 years later, he owed more than when he started paying. That is a common outcome for income-driven repayment programs. But with EdCap's guidance, he applied for PSLF and was finally freed from that debt. That relief allowed him to continue serving patients in New York State Hospital, exactly where he was needed most. But what happens to our hospitals where nurses can't afford to stay? Patients can't afford to lose nurses because we break that promise of PSLF. I have a client who was a retired social worker. She went back to work so that she could apply for PSLF, so that she could get her Parent Plus loans forgiven. And her children that she had paid for their education were so thankful that she had done so, but she held off retirement. For 10 years, she lived with cancer while making those payments because she didn't know about PSLF. She didn't know about disability discharges. And when she came to us, we helped her get that PSLF so she could finally retire. So today I'm here, I'm asking you to stand up for PSLF. I'm asking you to stand up for the New Yorkers who work in these professions, as well as those who work by my side at VLPCNY. I'm asking you to push the Department of Education to maintain this as a bipartisan program without political interference. And you know, in my experience, what these proposed changes to PSLF have already done is to start chipping away at that social safety program by diverting employees from public service jobs. Many of my clients heard about the executive orders and the negotiated rulemaking. They contacted me about a panic about whether they could lose their job, whether they could lose PSLF eligibility, and if they should change their job now to a different job to keep that eligibility. In fact, the language of the proposed changes is so arbitrary that most New York State public teachers and most New York State public employees could be excluded from PSLF forgiveness simply because their district or employer has a formal DEI policy or doesn't follow the rules implemented by the administration to penalize gender-affirming institutions. I urge you to remind the Department of Education that this program is not about forgiving debt. It's about building strong public schools, healthy families, building up our states and our nation. It's about promises made by public service employees and promises kept by our federal government to those employees. Let's make sure that no one has to choose between serving their community and building a stable life for their family. Let's keep the promise of PSLF alive. I thank you for your time and for taking on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pauline. I think just, you know, the comments that you made really touch upon how PSLF and all of its positive aspects, right, have such far-reaching implications. We at NYSBA, and you know, for most of us on the call today, we're focused on access to justice and legal services. But as you so eloquently spoke, this is an issue that impacts all of the helping professions, right? Education, healthcare, et cetera. And so these changes, as you noted, these potential changes will have really far-reaching impact. Any questions for Pauline? Okay. Thank you so much, Pauline. And so mindful of time and having us end on time, I just want to take a minute to thank all of our panelists today from both the first and second panels for sharing your expertise, your perspectives, your personal experience. I think it has been incredibly helpful to hear from so many different representatives from law schools, from loan advocacy programs, legal services, employers, individual attorneys who've benefited from these programs. We really appreciate your testimony. And it's quite clear, right? Based on what we heard this afternoon, the proposed changes to public service loan forgiveness will have far-reaching and, as we heard, right, chilling consequences for the legal services community and the low income clients who we serve, and the reason why we all do the work that we do. And so, just to share really quickly, we brought everyone here today to have this opportunity to hear firsthand from the individuals and organizations about these potential implications of the changes, so that, we can work with the New York State Bar Association to hopefully develop policy that will be supportive of public service loan forgiveness and its goals, as well as, I think, as others brought up here, the importance of loan forgiveness programs for attorneys who are pursuing public interest careers in general. And so we'll be compiling the stories, the data, the information we heard today, along with written testimony we received, and we'll be synthesizing our findings and recommendations into a report that we will be presenting to the House of Delegates for review and adoption later this winter. And for anyone who, we've had quite a number of people who have attended but who did not have a chance to speak. If anyone is interested in submitting written comment, we would gladly accept it. You still have time, and we would just ask that any written comment be submitted by October 10th, and that we can then take that into consideration as we develop our report and recommendations. And so on that note, just want to thank everyone again today for taking the time, for sharing your experiences. This is, there's more to come. And we'll be sure to share the report and including the findings and recommendations once it is hopefully adopted later this year. So thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.